They laughed when the old homeless man claimed his daughter was a CIA operative. The courtroom erupted in mockery when he insisted she couldn't appear because her work was classified. The judge rolled his eyes. The lawyers smirked. Even the bailiff shook his head. Then the doors opened, and 6 agents in black suits walked in. And suddenly, no one was laughing anymore. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we begin this powerful story of faith, family, and hidden truths, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who serve in silence. The Los Angeles Family Court building stood like a monument to broken promises, its concrete facade weathered by decades of bitter disputes. Inside courtroom 4, the afternoon light filtered through dirty windows, casting long shadows across worn wooden benches filled with the usual collection of lawyers, social workers, and fractured families. Marcus Thompson sat hunched in the back row, his weathered hands clutching a manila folder that had seen better days. His clothes were clean, but clearly second-hand. A faded dress shirt that hung loose on his thin frame, slacks that had been hemmed with visible stitching, and shoes that had walked too many miles on unforgiving pavement. His gray beard was neatly trimmed, his hair combed back with water, but there was no hiding the hollow look in his eyes or the way his shoulders curved inward from years of carrying invisible weight. The other people in the courtroom gave him a wide berth. He smelled like the shelter, that institutional mixture of disinfectant and defeat that clings to a man's clothes no matter how hard he scrubs. To them, he was just another casualty of the system, probably here for a restraining order or some minor infraction. None of them suspected that behind those tired eyes lay secrets that could reshape national security. Judge Patricia Hernandez entered with the brisk efficiency of someone who had seen it all and been disappointed by most of it. At 55, she had presided over family court for 12 years, her patience worn thin by deadbeat parents, custody battles, and the endless parade of excuses that walked through her courtroom. Case number 2024 FC 4891, the bailiff announced. Thompson versus Child Protective Services, custody hearing for minor child Sarah Thompson, age 16. Marcus stood slowly, his joints protesting after hours on the courthouse benches. He walked forward with deliberate steps, his worn shoes squeaking softly on the polished floor. The court-appointed attorney barely looked up from her papers as he sat down beside her. Ms. Rodriguez had been assigned to represent Marcus 3 days earlier. She was young, overworked, and clearly viewed his case as a lost cause. Her brief consisted of a single page of notes and the assumption that the homeless veteran would either no-show or accept whatever the state offered. Your Honor, the CPS attorney began, Mr. Thompson has been living on the streets for 18 months. He has no permanent address, no steady income, and has missed the last 3 scheduled visitations with his daughter. We recommend continued state custody with supervised visitation pending Mr. Thompson securing stable housing and employment. Judge Hernandez nodded, making notes. Mr. Thompson, do you have anything to say regarding these charges? Marcus cleared his throat, his voice hoarse from disuse. Your Honor, I need to explain why I missed those visits. My daughter Sarah, she couldn't make them because of her work schedule. A ripple of confusion moved through the courtroom. The CPS attorney frowned. Your Honor, Sarah Thompson is a 16-year-old ward of the state. She's required to attend school, not work. She does attend school, Marcus said, his voice gaining strength. But she also has another job, one that requires security clearance. Judge Hernandez leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, are you suggesting your teenage daughter has some kind of classified employment? Yes, ma'am. She works for the Central Intelligence Agency. The courtroom erupted in snickers and whispered comments. Someone in the gallery actually laughed out loud. The CPS attorney rolled her eyes so hard it was audible. Your Honor, the CPS attorney said with barely concealed amusement, this is exactly the kind of delusional thinking that demonstrates Mr. Thompson's unfitness as a parent. The CIA doesn't employ minors. Marcus opened his manila folder with shaking hands. I have documentation. Mr. Thompson, Judge Hernandez interrupted, her voice sharp with authority. This court deals in facts, not fantasies. The CIA does not recruit high school students. I suggest you focus on realistic plans for housing and employment rather than elaborate fiction. It's not fiction, Marcus insisted, his voice cracking with desperation. Sarah is brilliant. She speaks 7 languages fluently, has a photographic memory, and scored in the 99th percentile on every standardized test since elementary school. The agency recruited her 2 years ago through a special program for gifted minors. The laughter was no longer suppressed. The bailiff was grinning. Even Marcus's own attorney was looking at her notes as if searching for mental health evaluation recommendations. Mr. Thompson, Judge Hernandez said with the exaggerated patience reserved for the mentally unstable, I'm going to give you one more chance to address this court seriously. Do you have any realistic proposals proposals for reunification with your daughter? Marcus looked around the courtroom at the smirking faces, the shaking heads, the complete disbelief. For a moment, his shoulders sagged deeper, and it seemed like he might simply give up. Then his hand moved to his shirt pocket, where he kept a small, worn photograph of a serious-looking teenage girl with intelligent eyes. She told me people wouldn't believe it, he said quietly. She said that was the point. The best cover is the one that sounds impossible. Mr. Thompson, the judge began. She said if I ever needed to prove it, I should give them her handler's direct number and say the words, Project Minerva. The courtroom fell silent for a moment, then erupted in even louder laughter. Someone in the back row actually applauded the performance. Judge Hernandez banged her gavel. That's enough, Mr. Thompson. This court has heard sufficient evidence of your inability to distinguish reality from fantasy. Unless you can provide credible witnesses or documentation, the heavy courtroom doors opened with a measured creak. 6 figures in dark suits entered in perfect formation, their movements synchronized with military precision. They wore standard federal agent attire, black suits, white shirts, conservative ties, and the kind of shoes that clicked authoritatively on linoleum. But it wasn't their clothing that commanded attention. It was their presence. The lead figure was a woman in her 40s with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her eyes swept the courtroom with the clinical assessment of someone trained to catalog threats and calculate risks. Behind her, 2 men and 3 women maintained perfect spacing as they moved down the center aisle, their faces impassive but alert. The laughter died as if someone had flipped a switch. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Even the bailiff straightened unconsciously, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon before catching himself. The lead agent stopped precisely 10 feet from the bench and addressed Judge Hernandez with professional courtesy. Your Honor, I am Deputy Director Catherine Walsh, Central Intelligence Agency. I apologize for this interruption, but I understand there's been some confusion regarding one of our assets. Judge Hernandez's face had drained of color. She stared at the ID credentials Deputy Director Walsh held up, her mouth opening and closing without sound. This is highly irregular, the judge finally managed. This is a family court proceeding. Yes, ma'am, I'm aware. We're here regarding Sarah Thompson and her father's testimony. Walsh turned slightly toward Marcus, who was staring at the agents with a mixture of vindication and shock. Mr. Thompson, thank you for maintaining operational security protocols under difficult circumstances. The CPS attorney found her voice first. This has to be some kind of joke. The CIA doesn't employ minors. Deputy Director Walsh fixed her with a look that could have frozen nitrogen. Ma'am, I'd advise you to reconsider making statements about classified programs you have no knowledge of. She turned back to the judge. Your Honor, if we could speak privately, I can provide the appropriate documentation to clarify this situation. Judge Hernandez nodded mutely, then seemed to remember she was in charge of her own courtroom. Yes, my chambers, immediately. She looked at the bailiff. Clear the courtroom except for the principals and counsel. As the gallery filed out in stunned silence, many casting backward glances at the federal agents, Marcus remained seated at the defendant's table. His posture had straightened slightly, but his eyes held the cautious hope of a man who had been disappointed too many times to celebrate prematurely. Deputy Director Walsh approached him as the room emptied. Mr. Thompson, I want you to know that Sarah speaks of you constantly. She's very proud of her father. Is she? Marcus's voice cracked. Is she safe? She's the youngest analyst in agency history to receive a commendation for exceptional service, Walsh replied. And she's been requesting permission to contact you for months. We've had to deny those requests for security reasons, but given today's circumstances, I think we can make an exception. In Judge Hernandez's chambers, the atmosphere was thick with tension and disbelief. The judge sat behind her desk, flanked by law books and family photos, while Deputy Director Walsh placed a sealed folder before her. These documents were declassified this morning specifically for this hearing, Walsh explained. Project Minerva is a highly classified program designed to identify and cultivate exceptionally gifted minors for intelligence work. Sarah Thompson was recruited at age 14 after demonstrating remarkable linguistic and analytical abilities. Judge Hernandez opened the folder with trembling hand. Her eyes widened as she read. This says she's already completed field assignments, limited scope, heavily supervised, entirely within legal parameters for minors. Her work has been invaluable to ongoing operation. Walsh's voice carried quiet pride. She insisted we maintain her cover by allowing her father to appear to be delusional rather than reveal program details. Her dedication to operational security has been exemplary. The judge flipped through more pages, her expression growing more incredulous with each document. These are psychological evaluations, IQ tests, language proficiency certifications. This girl tested at genius level across multiple categories. Sarah speaks Mandarin, Russian, Arabic, Farsi, French, French, German, and Spanish fluently, Walsh explained. She also demonstrates exceptional pattern recognition abilities and has an eidetic memory. The agency identified her through a nationwide talent search program that monitors gifted student databases. But she's 16 years old, the CPS attorney protested weakly. Chronologically, yes. Intellectually, she operates at the level of someone with multiple advanced degrees. The agency has strict protocols for minor operatives. They work exclusively in analytical roles, never field operations involving direct contact with foreign assets. Her assignments involve linguistic analysis, code breaking, and data pattern recognition. Walsh turned to a specific page in the folder. Your Honor, this is a letter of recommendation from the Deputy Director of National Intelligence. Sarah's work on a recent cyber-terrorism case helped prevent what could have been a catastrophic attack on critical infrastructure. Marcus sat quietly, absorbing information about his daughter's life that he had never fully understood. The pride in his eyes was mixed with a deep sadness for the childhood she had sacrificed in service to her country. Mr. Thompson, Judge Hernandez said, looking at him with new respect, did you understand the full scope of what you were agreeing to when you supported your daughter's recruitment? Marcus cleared his throat. Your Honor, when they first approached us, Sarah was already teaching herself her 6th language. She was solving puzzles designed for college students when she was 12. The agency didn't change her. They just gave her a purpose that matched her abilities. He paused, his hands folding in his lap. They explained that her work would require periods of separation, that I couldn't know the details of her assignments, and that maintaining her cover might mean personal sacrifices for both of us. I agreed, because I could see how much it meant to her. The housing situation, Walsh interjected, was a necessary security measure. Mr. Thompson's apartment was too close to a foreign consulate that we suspected of surveillance activity. We couldn't risk Sarah's identity being compromised by association. So, you made him homeless, the CPS attorney said accusingly. We provided temporary housing in various secure locations, Walsh corrected. Mr. Thompson chose to refuse permanent relocation because he wanted to remain close to Sarah's school and maintain the illusion of personal instability. It was his decision to sacrifice his comfort for operational security. The weight of Marcus's sacrifice settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Here was a father who had chosen to be seen as deranged and destitute, rather than compromise his daughter's vital work for national security. Judge Hernandez closed the folder and looked at Walsh. What happens now? If this case has drawn attention to Mr. Thompson's situation, hasn't that potentially compromised the operation? The program is being restructured, Walsh replied. Sarah's cohort was part of a pilot project that proved minor operatives could be successfully integrated into intelligence work. The next phase will involve more stable family arrangements and better support systems for the families involved. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Thompson, the agency is offering you a position as a linguistic consultant. Your daughter mentioned that you're fluent in 3 languages and have experience in translation work. The salary would be substantial, and the position comes with security clearance and appropriate housing. Marcus looked stunned. I worked as a translator before Sarah was recruited. I had to quit when the agency required me to maintain irregular schedules and unexplained absences. We know, Walsh said simply. Your background check was thorough, and your language skills are impressive. The agency takes care of its assets' families, Mr. Thompson. We should have done better by you from the beginning. The CPS attorney leaned forward. You're telling us that you've been allowing this man to be treated as mentally unstable to protect a classified program? The alternative was compromising national security, Walsh replied without emotion. Mr. Thompson understood this and accepted the personal cost. Not many people would make that sacrifice for their country. Judge Hernandez closed the folder. Where is Sarah now? She's completing a specialized training program in Virginia. She'll graduate next month and begin her senior year of high school through distance learning while maintaining her analytical duties. Walsh paused. She's requested permission to attend her father's custody hearing. Given the circumstances, we've approved her appearance. She's here, Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Walsh nodded to one of her agents, who spoke into a discreet microphone. Minutes later, the chamber door opened, and Sarah Thompson entered. She was tall for 16, with her father's intelligent eyes but stronger shoulders that spoke to extensive physical training. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore a conservative business suit that somehow made her look both mature and impossibly young. Dad, she said simply, and Marcus rose from his chair with tears streaming down his face. Sarah. He opened his arms hesitantly, as if afraid she might disappear. When she stepped into his embrace, 18 months of separation collapsed into a single moment of connection. I'm sorry you had to go through all this, she whispered. I wanted to contact you so many times, but they said it wasn't safe. I knew, Marcus said, holding her tightly. I knew you were doing something important. I just didn't know what. Judge Hernandez watched the reunion opinion with growing understanding. Mr. Thompson, I owe you an apology. This court failed to recognize the extraordinary circumstances surrounding your case. Your Honor, Sarah said, stepping back from her father but keeping one hand on his arm. My father has never failed me as a parent. When the agency first approached me, he could have refused to let me participate. Instead, he supported my decision even knowing it would mean months of separation and public humiliation for him. That's not the action of an unfit parent. Deputy Director Walsh addressed the judge. Your Honor, I should mention that Mr. Thompson's current housing situation is also related to his daughter's work. We required him to maintain a low profile for security reasons, which meant giving up his apartment and employment. The agency has arranged for suitable housing and a security-cleared position for him, pending resolution of this custody matter. The CPS attorney looked bewildered. So this whole case is based on circumstances that were orchestrated by the federal government. Inadvertent consequences of necessary security protocols, Walsh corrected. But yes, Mr. Thompson's apparent instability was a direct result of protecting classified operations. Judge Hernandez leaned back in her chair, processing the enormity of what she had just learned. Deputy Director Walsh, I need to understand something. How many other families are going through similar situations? How many other parents are being judged by systems that don't understand the sacrifices they're making? Walsh's expression grew somber. Your Honor, that's classified information, but I can say this. Project Minerva involved 12 families initially. Mr. Thompson's case is not unique, though his dedication to maintaining operational security has been exceptional. 12 families, the judge repeated slowly. 12 families whose lives have been turned upside down for national security. The program has evolved, Walsh said. We've learned from cases like the Thompson. Future operations will have better support systems in place for families. But at the time Sarah was recruited, we were operating in uncharted territory. Marcus found his voice again. Your Honor, if I may, I want the court to understand something. When Sarah first told me about the opportunity, I had a choice. I could have said no. I could have kept my daughter safe and normal and with me every day. He looked at Sarah with infinite tenderness. But I watched her struggle in regular school, bored out of her mind, solving calculus problems during English class, reading college-level texts for fun. The agency didn't steal my daughter. They gave her a chance to use gifts that were already making her miserable in the regular world. Sarah stepped closer to her father. Dad sacrificed everything so I could serve my country. When other kids were worried about prom dates, I was helping prevent terrorist attacks. When other parents were bragging about their children's report cards, my father was telling social workers he didn't know where I was. The weight of their shared sacrifice hung heavy in the air. Judge Hernandez looked at the CPS attorney. Ms. Rodriguez, given what we've learned here today, do you still believe Mr. Thompson poses a risk to his daughter? The CPS attorney shuffled her papers nervously. Your Honor, this is completely outside my experience. If the federal government is vouching for both Mr. Thompson's stability and his daughter's safety, then I suppose the state withdraws its petition for continued custody, she said formally. We recommend immediate reunification with appropriate oversight from the relevant federal agencies. Walsh nodded. The agency will provide ongoing support and monitoring to ensure both Sarah and Mr. Thompson have the resources they need. We take care of our own, Your Honor. We should have done better from the beginning. Judge Hernandez turned to Sarah. What do you want, young lady? In terms of custody arrangements, Sarah looked at her father with deep affection. I want to live with my dad when I'm not at the training facility. I want him to be proud of what I do, not ashamed of what he had to endure to protect it. She paused. And I want this court to know that my father is a hero, even if his heroism has to remain classified. An hour later, they emerged from the chambers together. The custody order had been dismissed, all records sealed, and a new arrangement put in place that acknowledged Sarah's unique circumstances while protecting both her work and her relationship with her father. In the empty courtroom, Marcus sat with his daughter for the first time in 18 months, just talking about her training, his time on the streets, their fears for each other, and their plans for the future. Are you going to be okay with all this? Sarah asked. The secrecy, the restrictions, the fact that most people will never know what you sacrificed? Marcus looked at his brilliant, dedicated daughter and smiled for the first time since she'd left home. Sweetheart, I spent 18 months being called crazy so you could serve your country. I'd do it again tomorrow, even if no one ever knows the truth. Marcus squeezed her hand. The people who matter know. That's enough for me. As they left the courthouse together, father and daughter walking side by side, Deputy Director Walsh watched from her vehicle. She spoke into her phone. Project Minerva status update. Assets secured. Cover maintained. Family unit stable. Recommend continued monitoring with minimal interference. She paused, watching Marcus laugh at something Sarah said. And make sure Mr. Thompson's new apartment has good lighting. A man who's willing to sacrifice his reputation for his country deserves to read his daughter's father's letters clearly. The car pulled away, leaving two figures silhouetted against the setting Los Angeles sun, their shadows long on the courthouse steps, their bonds strengthened by secrets that would never be fully told. Sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who let the world think they're broken, just to keep the people they love safe. Sometimes the best parents are the ones who endure public shame to protect their children's future. And sometimes the most important truths are the ones that must remain forever secret. Have you ever known someone who carried a burden in silence, who let others judge them rather than reveal a truth that wasn't theirs to tell? Share your story in the comments below and let us know what city you're watching from today. If this story moved you, subscribe to Secrets Never Told. We're here to honor the quiet heroes whose sacrifices remain hidden, whose strength goes unrecognized, and whose love speaks louder than any words they're allowed to say. Until next time, remember, not all heroes wear uniforms, and not all truths can be spoken aloud.